Okay, so as promised, we're starting on exercise 229. Shocking how few days left there are in the semester, as in 4, and then the final. So there's not a lot of time left, 2 weeks. Panicking is probably in order, at least for your other classes, probably not for this one. Hopefully you've done a lot of the work already. That's the idea. So a lot of the remaining 2 weeks is going to be spent waiting for your renderings to finish. So that's to be expected. Obviously, I'll be here as much as I can. If you want to come in before in my earlier class, you're welcome to. There's plenty of computers to set up renderings. A lot of times people will let renderings go overnight. Most of the time people are nice about it and leave the computers untouched, especially if you put a little note saying, I'm rendering, please don't close this. So most of the time it should work, but it is what it is. Good news is you have network rendering, so things are significantly faster than they have been in the past. They don't always work correctly, but at least we have something. So today and on Wednesday, I am going to devote 2 whole class days to working through how do you cut a section in Rhino, get a rendering out of it in V-Ray, so that you can make really high-end sections. The goal is that you'll all leave here. We already covered sections once in the semester, so this is repeat, but you'll leave here really knowing this is how I cut a section, and I think it's really important that you get that. That being said, the same techniques that I'm using for cutting a section can be used to cut a plan, because a plan is in fact just a section, it's just in the opposite direction. So what we're using can apply to more than one view. So I have my my house set up. This is one that I've spent a little bit more time adding a bunch of lighting to. So I'm going to go ahead and do a night section because I have all the lighting already installed. You can do a day section, you can do a night section. It's really it's up to you. But this one anyway has a bunch of lighting and that sort of thing already installed. So that being said, when I look at this building, I want to think about where do I want to cut the section. And so if I switch here into shaded mode so that it's solid, in an ideal world, I'd like to cut through this set of stairs so that I can see them both in section and in elevation. I think that would be it cuts through all 3 of these buildings or sub-buildings, rooms, whatever you want to call them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch into my top view so that I can kind of see what I'm working through here. And I'd really like to cut the section right kind of through there. That would be ideal. So I'm going to start with just a plain polyline. I'm going to turn all of my snaps off for right now. And I'm going to draw that polyline through, starting in one part where I want to cut my section. And so I'm just going to go way out big. There's one side of it. All right, let me zoom back in. And I'm doing this in the top view with a line like this. We'll turn the snap back on so that it's really easy to get it larger than that giant circle out on either side. Okay. Once I have that established, I can use that as kind of a guide, and I know that then a plane that I draw will go through the correct part of my building when I step way back. And so the next piece that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, and let me go ahead before I do this and create a layer called section. And I'm going to move it all the way to the bottom. Right? And I'll create a sublayer called section plane, which is what I'm going to create right now. And what I'll do is I'll create a tall vertical plane. So hidden underneath the plane tool, if we remember way back, there's a vertical plane tool. I'm going to use that one to go from one end and the other end, and I'm going to make a really big plane. And then I'll move that plane down. So move vertical so that it clearly intersects everything in my model. Okay, that's the goal. And so I have that completely intersecting my model, and it's on the section layer. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a combination of things. The first thing that I want to do is I'm going to set up a section tool section so that I can actually see kind of the section that I'm going after. So what I'll do is I'll go up to section tools and I'll say create, or st create is the command line. Select objects to section, I'm going to select all except for the plane, and I'll hit enter. And then to accept the direction, I want it to be along the x-axis, which is correct. Replace, no, that's fine. Load from file. Okay, solid mode right here. I want to make it have surfaces, so when it cuts this, it's going to create surfaces for me. Show all, that's fine. Okay, so all those options are good. And then we look at, there's my section. It's pointing the wrong direction. I want it pointing the opposite way, so I'll type F for flip. It's going to be going that direction. And I'll use this giant plane as a snapping point to cut that section. Okay, so it's done that. I'll go ahead and hit enter when I'm done, and it will build section 00 right there. The layer contains the, and I'm going to put it underneath my section layer here. The layer contains the objects, the solid surfaces that it created. So if I make that active and I turn off my section plane, that. If we start to zoom in here, right, we can see the lines that it created, that it cut through, where it cut through my building. We can see the topography that it cut through. So all of that's looking pretty good. I'd like to take a quick look at what my section is going to look like. So let me go to Section Tools, and I'm going to View. Maybe. All right, there we go. And so I'm going to click on List for listing the sections, and I'll pick section 00. Okay. What viewport do I want to enable it in? Exterior night 01. And now I have that section enabled so that I can kind of see, okay, does it look approximately the way I want it to look? Is it cutting through the building the way I want it to cut through the building? Okay. Looks pretty good. Looks like I have a bit of ceiling that I never finished right here, which is why it didn't fill in this part of the wall. Stuff happens. Right? So in an ideal world, I probably need to address that issue. And because I'm in this nice view right now, I can use, let me create a new subsection here, or sub-layer. We'll call this section 00 fill. And I can go ahead and I can fill in with the 3 or 4 corner points any of the little surfaces that I'm missing. Okay. And so I can spend a little bit of time doing that. Sometimes it's hard to actually get these to snap correctly. So I'll spend a little bit more time working on that. For now, we'll leave it. Okay, so I have that, okay, which I'm going to use. The next part of this that I need is this actually won't render when I go to render it. It will render the whole building. And that's because V-Ray doesn't recognize this section tools as being a valid section. So I need to do a split of my whole model so that I can turn part of it a transparent material and part of it not. So I'm going to turn back on that section plane, and I'm also going to ST clear all views, which is also under section tools, clear all views. There it is. Okay, and I get my building back. All right, so there it is. So I'm not going to deal with my lights at all, so I'm actually going to turn off my lights for right now. I'll turn them back on in a little bit, but when I do the split, I don't want to deal with any of the lights. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and select, or I'll type split. Select objects to split. We'll do a Control A to select everything except for that big plane. Okay, enter when done. Select cutting objects, it'll be that big plane, and I'll go ahead and I'll hit enter. Now this can take some time, so I'm going to let it run for a little bit. Couple things to point out right now that can be problematic when you do this. If you have any blocks that are in the scene, it probably won't split the block until you explode it. Right? So if you have some furniture or something and you cut through the furniture, it's probably not going to do it. So be aware of that. You may have to explode. So once I've done that, I'm going to take a quick look right here in my elevation view, and I'll be able to tell really quickly. Oops, that's the wrong view. the front view. One. No. Here's this view. I'll be able to tell really quickly if it is in fact a separate part of the building. Actually, you know what? Because it's so much harder to select from left to right, I'm actually going to flip my view to the right, to the left view, so that I can select from this side. So let me go ahead and select here, right up to that line. And if I did it correctly, right, it should select everything and nothing should go over that line. Okay, and I did the split correctly, so it did work correctly. Okay, so that being said, I need to make a few modifications. Let's see here. First thing that I need to do is I don't want to apply any material to the glass just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off anything that has glass. So let me turn on interior. Oh, that's fine. It has a stair railing that's glass, so I'm going to turn that off. Exterior, that's all fine. Okay, the windows have glass, so we're going to turn off glass there. Nothing else there. Let me look in environment here. Good. Alright, good. So I've gone through and I've selected anything, I've deselected, I've just turned off the layers of anything that has glass on it. And now I'm going to go to my materials and I'm going to load my see-through material. So I'm going to go to load material and I'll go to the Q drive and I'll go to V-Ray materials. It's a special material, see-through, and I'm going to load this see-through material. And remember from the last time we talked about see-through material, this is a special material that is opaque to sunlight, so it blocks all sun, right? But it's transparent to the viewer, so it can't see it. It's like something that could never actually exist in real life. Okay, it's a fake material. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this to the selection. Oh, you know what? I failed miserably on one thing that I probably should have told you all first. Before you do the split, make sure you save as your work, because if you don't, it's a permanent change to your work, right? So I probably just screwed up my file, but so be it, right? Don't follow my lead. Make sure you save as before you do it.
Before splitting.
You're right, before you do the split, because as soon as you do the split is when you mess everything up. So always do a save as. It is written out in the step-by-steps everywhere to make sure. I think it's bolded in the little handout that I gave you. So I try to hit you over the head. Okay, so I'm going to right-click on see-through, and I'm going to say apply material to selection, which means that everything that I have selected will have this see-through material applied to it. So that's good. And I'll go ahead and click. And so everything has that applied to it. Now I need to go back and I need to turn on all of that glass. Okay? So let me go ahead and I'm going to go to each layer that's turned off. I'll turn it on and then I'm going to say select objects. It's going to select everything that's on that layer. Let me go ahead and select, where's the next one? It's not that. Here it is right here. So I'm going to turn it on and then I'll hold down, I'll right click and say select objects, right, and it'll add the glass to the selection. And I think we have it all now. Okay, now I don't need it on this half, right? So I'm going to hold down Control. And that was not what I wanted to do. And try my very best to select anything on this half that I don't want. Okay, so I have the things that are on this side. I'm a little confused and concerned why the glass hasn't selected there, but this needs to be just a pure transparent, and I'll come back and look at those windows in just a second. So I'll go to my materials, and I'm going to make a transparent material. So let me right click on Scene Materials, say Create Material, Standard Material. and this just needs to be 100% transparent. So I'll say OK. Nothing else matters. 100% transparent. Let me rename it to be transparent. Say OK. And I'm going to apply material to selection again. And that then applies it to these windows. So what I'm concerned about is that some of these outer windows here are blocks, and their materials didn't change. So I want to make some adjustments to these, and this is part of why saving as is a good idea, because as soon as you start to make these kinds of tweaks for this particular rendering, you're kind of ruining your original file. So let me go ahead and see if I can select these block instances. Go. I've got those block instances. I'm going to go ahead and explode. And then let's see if I can select just the surfaces. And it may be easier to select there we go. So once again, I selected the windows. They were just, since they were inside the block, they didn't get updated. Let me come back to my left view here, and again I'm going to make sure, I'm going to hold down Control, I'm going to make sure that I can deselect everything on this side of the section. I didn't mean to deselect that. Alright, so I have all of those selected. I'm going to go back to my materials, and I'm going to right click on transparent and say apply material to selection. So if I did it correctly, right, all of my windows should be completely transparent. All of my solid objects are going to be rendered basically in a special material that is opaque to sunlight, so sunlight can't pass through it, but that we can't see. Okay, and once I have that established, I'm going to go ahead and switch my view from my left view into my front view, which happens to be the view that best shows what it is that I'm trying to do. I'm going to click on, let me go and change this to shaded for right now, so we're seeing it. Okay, but I'd like to kind of get a preview of what this is going to look like so I can set up my view correctly. So let me go ahead and turn on my section tools, and we'll do ST view. And we're going to pick section 00, and I'll say OK. Okay, all of that's fine. Viewport is going to be front. And we're going to be able to see through. Now, what I'm currently looking at, I don't see anything because I have that giant section plane still showing. So let me turn off the section plane, and now we have a pretty good sense of this is what I'm seeing in my particular view. We've cut through. I'm getting the railing. I've got all my little pieces that I've cut through. So I'm fairly happy that this is turning out the way I want it to turn out. But let's polish it up a little bit more, right? So if we're looking at this, I'm going to jump back into the perspective view, and I'm also going to show the section in this view as well. So let me say ST view, and it's going to be exterior, right? There we go. So I can kind of get a sense for where I am, what I've cut through. And what I want now is I want to make a few other things. So I've got this nice curve. Let me do an offset of that curve, and we'll do a distance of 200 feet. And I'm probably going to need to switch my view. Well, let's change the distance. I don't need that much. Go to 50 feet. That should be enough. Take this, and again, my section layer over here is active, so let me loft, and we'll fill that in. Let me take this piece, and I'm going to do the same offset. And we'll loft these together. basically what I'm doing is I'm giving myself some ground. Okay. Need to create a little bit more ground underneath the building here. So let me go ahead. Let me just do. Okay. My mouse stopped clicking. Sorry. Come on, mouse. Now I'm not really overly concerned if these overlap a little bit because of what I'm doing. They're going to all render out solid. Okay, so I've got those. I should probably touch up anything that is not solid right now. I got to turn off center. Sorry. Sorry, bear with me for a little bit. Good. Sometimes it takes multiple views to confirm that you've got it. The section tools command should take care of all this for us. But since my model wasn't built quite correctly, I'm having to deal with some of it myself. Almost there. Alright. I think we're getting pretty close. A couple more little pieces here. Alright, so that should be enough to get where I needed to go in terms of isolating those pieces. Now I want to apply to that layer just either a dark gray or dark black or something that is going to represent the section cut. So let me go ahead and go to materials, and I'll create a new basic material, standard, and we'll call this section cut material. Okay, and for right now, we'll leave it a dark gray and see how it looks, right? And once I have that, I'm going to apply this section cut material to a layer. Apply to layer, and it's going to be the fill layer. And just in case I have some objects on the other layer, let me go ahead and select apply material to layer, and we will pick the section 00 as well. Okay, so it's on both of those layers now. Now I can come back to the front view, and we'll zoom in on this a little bit. Okay, and now I have my building with my nice topography ready to go. So let's take a quick look at whatever this is. This, I believe, is the curve that I originally drew. I just want to make sure. Yep, it is the curve that I originally drew, so it's not going to show up as anywhere. Let me go back to my lighting, which I told you we were going to turn back on, which I'll turn back on like that. Part of the reason I left the lights around still on, they're transparent unless they'll still shine through the windows, which is ideal. So we'll turn those back on. I don't need any of my bunch grass because it's all on the other side. And if we look at everything else, the section plane is off, so we should be good to go. So let me go into my options, my V-Ray options. I'm going to go to System, and I want to make sure that it is set up to network render, which it appears to be. Let me go ahead and resolve my servers. Say OK. And now I need to go to my output, and I'm going to make my output a lot smaller than it was so that we can do a test and see how it turns out. That should work. And so I'll go ahead and close this now. And before I go forward, I'm going to do a save as. And we'll call this night section. And this is 229. And I'll go ahead and click save. And as soon as it's done saving, I'll start the render. Now the render still, even though we have the network render, still probably going to take a little bit of time. So I will pause the recording, let it render, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about how it turned out or didn't turn out. Okay, so it actually didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would. But like I said, it was a night render. And so if I look through it, I can see that the renderings have been applied. Right? The lights are showing the way they should on the inside. Light coming from the outside is on the outside. The only problem that I have is something that's right here. Not quite sure what that is. Oh, it looks like I have a holdover of a couple window frames on the exterior that were not given the see-through material, and that was because they were blocks. So I need to go back and correct that as a problem. I do have my exterior lighting on the grounds that are showing up there. Maybe the next time I'll turn on my bunch grass so we can see it at least a little bit in profile. Probably should lighten up. You guys can't see it as well as I can, but I should lighten up the background a little bit so we can see a little bit more of the nighttime sky. But it's turning out pretty well from a sectional standpoint. Okay, so this is my nighttime view. The other thing that I'll do as an experiment, and I'll show you guys this in a little bit, is I'll render one that's an axonometric or perspective section, so you guys can see what that looks like as well. So let me go ahead and do a little bit of tweaking to this, and then I'll show you the next round as you continue to work. Okay, so I just let it finish doing its next render. Of course, things are always a little bit light, but because I changed the material on those window frames, those have now gone away, so that part's correct. So I'm going to continue and go back and lighten up the background. I just want to keep pointing out what I'm doing as I go along. Okay, so that was the next little iteration. Next one will be in the options, lightening up the background.
have a question. I wanted to try a dome light. It doesn't. All right, I clicked dome light, but then I'm not prompted with.
It may have created it. It's not what you're thinking. It's not like a little light. It's like an environmental light, the bigger light.
Oh.
So it may be there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. There's your.
Oh, several.
There's your domes. So they're like kind of global lighting. I don't personally.
Oh,
I would rather use a sun system.
okay.
Alright, so this is the next iteration. I adjusted the camera exposure so it's a little bit better. It's hard to see it on the screen. On my screen, the background's actually too light now because I adjusted the exposure, but it's starting to read pretty nicely. So from here, I can choose to save all the channels, which would be right here. So I'll save all of these. Let me make sure I have a exercise. Oh, I do already have an exercise 229. And we go with the new folder. 14. And we'll call the section 00. And I'll go ahead and click save. And I will then save all of my VFB channels at the same time. The other thing that I can do is that I can switch my view from being kind of the standard view here into a perspective view, so that I can do a perspective section. So we'll set my view the way I want it to look here. Get a little bit closer. And then we can go ahead and render, and you guys can see how that one looks in a little bit. And then I'll do one more that's a daytime render just for the comparison. Okay, so this one just finished a sectional perspective where we get a nice cut through the hillside. This is when you uncover things, right? These lights were blocks, therefore they didn't get changed in material. In reality, I'd probably just delete these lights because they're not really doing a whole lot for my rendering. I have a set down below and I have a set up above. Those are obviously distracting from the overall render, but you can see that it's rendering both the exterior light and the interior light, so you're getting a really good sense of what this looks like, and that's really the idea behind being able to cut this kind of a section, right? Next class I'll show you a little bit more about how you might be able to overlay a line drawing on top of it and kind of tweak it out a little bit more, but this is the bulk of what we're working on for the next 2 days. I do really want you to have a good quality section. It's not required for the final assignment, but it will be looked upon very favorably if there's a section included as well. Okay?